Okay, welcome everybody back to the Optimized channel. Today we're going to be talking about migrating from Smartsheets to Airtable. We have Jessica here who just joined the team as head of training. She's also had experience doing this migration at her previous role. So excited to have Jessica on the channel. Jessica, if you want to do a quick introduction.
Thanks, Ben. Happy to be here. Like Ben said, I joined Optimize about a month ago as director of training. I came from a really large organization, about 10,000 people. My individual team had about 10 to 15 people on it. And we did that migration from Smartsheet fully off to Airtable.
Awesome. So in the last video, if you didn't get to watch it, we were talking about why you might choose Airtable versus Smartsheets. And this one, we're going to be talking about specifically the migration. And if you want to jump in, we can just talk like what were some of the tangible things that you did first. And then I think at the end, maybe we'll talk about like what worked well versus not with that method and maybe talk about other methods as well. But how did you do it when you first started?
Sure. So I joined the team at the time where they had made the decision to migrate from Smartsheet to Airtable. So it wasn't a decision made by me, but definitely a decision that I loved. The problems that we ran into in the beginning was that the data that we were trying to extract from Smartsheet wasn't always user friendly to then integrate and migrate into Airtable. Right. So like if you look at Smartsheet, you're looking at everything on one spreadsheet. You have projects underneath tasks like roll down, and then you have subtasks underneath that. So when you export that data into a CSV file, it would be really nice to just upload to Airtable. The problem becomes is that because it's like the parent child right underneath, it makes it harder. So unfortunately for me, what we did is we did it one by one. And it wasn't ideal, right? Like it took a lot longer than it should have. It was accurate because we did it one by one, but it did take a lot of time. So
Do you
not
happen to know like an estimate, like how many projects or how many tasks did you end up having to migrate?
Yeah, so I can give like a rough estimate. We can go with every project will have at least 10 tasks to it. Some of them had 20, right? Projects wise at that point, we probably did about, I want to say like 30 at least. And then subtasks were rare, but they were there. So like maybe one or two or three per project, but they were there in case we needed them. So.
Okay. So it wasn't quite as simple as, so why could you talk a little about why it was a different like data structure in Smartsheets versus Airtable? Like why wasn't it just like a one-to-one match?
Yeah. So, and this all could be that maybe we didn't do it the correct way. So I'll ask you for your opinion on that. But so the way that Smartsheet is laid out is you have projects underneath, you have tasks, and underneath you have subtasks. Whereas in Airtable, you have three separate tables: one table for projects, one table for tasks, and one table for subtasks that can link up, of course. The issue with that is we probably could have sorted the data and just put all the projects in, put all the tasks in, but then it's still a manual effort to go in there and then link them all up, right? So
Yeah.
what we did is we entered every single project by hand, all of the tasks associated and all of the subtasks, as well as you have to also think about, we're bringing in all of the dates, all of the statuses, all of the notes, right? So like any notes that are on there, we want to bring in because we don't want anyone to have to go back to Smartsheet for anything. Like we're moving off the tool. We don't want to be back in there. So yeah, I think it was just difficult because we went from one sheet that was layered to three separate tables.
Yeah. So I'm curious how, so it sounds like in Airtable you had defined like you'll have projects, tasks, subtasks. In Smartsheets, did you ever have like a fourth layer where you had like subtasks? Was that possible? I think it's technically possible. You just didn't have
It's
it.
technically possible in both, right? Like you can have another table in Airtable, and in Smartsheet
Mm-hmm.
you could, but no. So what we could have had is multiple subtasks relating to the same task. So like you could add a task with five subtasks and that all still will relate to that same project, but we didn't have like a fourth layer, no.
Okay. So that makes things simpler. I don't know if anybody watching this has a fourth layer, but I hope you don't.
I mean, honestly, even with three layers, it really wasn't that simple, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, but yeah, you're right. So it's not like the one-to-one match because when you export it from Smartsheets using the method you did, it's just going to give you one Excel or one CSV, but everything's going to be stacked on top of each other. But you need to split that essentially into like 3 different CSVs so that you can import it into 3 different tables.
Yeah. I also think that gets a little messy, right? Like then you're still talking about that you have to link it up.
Yeah.
Um,
There are some tricks to that, which I guess takes us into the other method of doing it, which would be either maybe there's another export that has information that you didn't have to like help represent the relationships of projects, tasks, and subtasks to each other,
yeah.
like using something like a unique identifier or a primary key, which is more of
Yeah.
like a database concept than a spreadsheet concept.
Right.
But also using the API, which
Right.
definitely takes a lot more work and is more technical, but I think it would solve some of the pain points of doing it manually. And if you're a team that has hundreds or thousands of projects, then you would probably want to do it.
Please don't do it manually if you have more than 30 projects.
Yeah.
Um, well, that's the other thing too, right? Like we had 30 active projects. If you look at, like, we were bringing in all of our projects. So we also had, maybe 100 completed projects. And what we did there is we exported to CSV. We deleted all of the tasks and subtasks. So we just had projects, and then we imported that CSV into Airtable. The downside of that is, for tracking purposes, like our directors like to see like how many tasks per project and who's on what tasks and how many tasks do you have versus like, so all of those dashboard features that you can have, we didn't have that for the historical data. So they have that moving forward now, but for the backend they didn't. They just had how many completed projects were done in 2022. So yeah.
Yeah. How did you migrate? Like, how did you find migrating some of the other features outside of just the data layer, like whether it's automations or task templates? Like, were you the one migrating those, or did those even exist in your Smartsheet instance?
Um, they didn't really exist
Okay.
because we had the limitations there. So like automations wise, we kind of started over because there was a lot more functionality within Airtable, and then template wise, we did not have a good system within Smartsheet. Sorry.
All right. Well, if you want to learn more about record templates, Jessica had a very specific way that it was not very easily, but this is basically like if you have a repeatable process or a repeatable list of tasks on a project and you want to easily be able to keep generating new lists of tasks that are standard, how you would do that in Airtable. Because it sounds like it was a little bit clunky in Smartsheets, maybe based on our previous conversation, but in the next video, we'll talk about record templates. So click the video here in the end screen and you'll learn about that. It'll be somewhere in the middle of the screen. You can click on it. It'll take you to the next video.